Well done on the pronunciation of the name, by the way. That was spot on. Hello, everyone. My name is Roashan. I come from Novo Nordisk, Japan. And then you might think, did you fly all the way from Japan to Helsinki? No, I did not. I'm currently in Copenhagen for a couple of months. So that explains why. Um, yeah, no, I think some inspirational talks from the sort of colleagues, so to say. Novo Nordisk, I promise I'm not going to talk about Ozempic today, right? So this is going to be about design. It's going to be health innovation. The title of the talk is "Can Pharma Play a Sincere Role in Advancing the State of Healthcare?" And I think before going into the details, the reason why we put the word "sincere," and I think that's quite important, is that often private companies they always have a commercial agenda, right? And I think we should be transparent around that. Um, for private companies to partner up with healthcare stakeholders, sincerity is sort of one of the critical success factors. Now, share a little bit more about that later. But this is super important. I think it's also important to say that pharma companies, we speak a lot about this term beyond the pill. Again, it's quite vague. Most of the times we're talking adherence apps, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm really keen on sharing a story with you of what we achieved in Danish healthcare that was truly, in fact, beyond the pill, and it drove really good health outcomes. And we saw great effects among healthcare professionals. We worked with topics such as burnout, organizational excellence, and health outcomes at the same time. Now, before I share that story with you, I want to go sort of into a very personal aspect and share my resilience score. I actually have an Aura ring and have been a big fan of Aura and in general Finnish technology for many years. I want to draw a comparison between healthcare and heart rate variability. How many in here measure their heart rate variability on a daily basis? Yeah, got a few. So long story short, heart rate variability is sort of has been there for many decades, right? And it's not until recently where we're trying to use that data point to show the resilience of an individual, or sort of depict the autonomous nervous system of an individual, to sort of show how much can this person take on of load or exertion on any given day, or stress, you could say. And I want to share with you. So about a month ago, I relocated to Japan, and we're also expecting a baby. And my wife is sort of late in her pregnancy, so she couldn't travel with me. And I'm just going to share with you here, and it's quite interesting. If we can show that, you can see I started quite strong, right? And then around early September, this is like my first day in the office in Japan. September 1, I'm like dying basically here at this point. And then things started going better. And the reason why I'm trying to draw this comparison is essentially, we look at healthcare, the sort of uniform challenges you see across the globe is there's huge demand for healthcare services. This, if you're repeating ourselves many times, aging population, chronic disease prevalence, but it's equally also about awareness and health capital. Most of us are more curious around our health, and we go to our doctors with our wearable data. We want blood work done every 3 months. All this is really, increasing the demand for healthcare services. At the same time, we are utterly limited in terms of resource, both hands and heads, but also money, funding. The whole funding model is still quite challenged. Most of the time, it's publicly funded. In other cases, you have private insurance companies. They're just as strict as the public payers. And this sort of brings us to a context of too high of a load and literally no recovery for a healthcare sector. Very much like my state in early September. I was dealing with a lot of stuff, packing up, going to a new country, very different country, at the same time leaving my wife in Denmark. There's a lot of thoughts, and I couldn't necessarily put on more more stress on my body. That is very much, I would say, how I would describe the healthcare sector in a global context, is that it's constantly in a fight or flight mode. We're uh, putting off fire every single day, whether it's primary care or secondary care. There's no time to actually rest and digest. And it is in the time of rest and digest that we actually develop. This is where our physiological state or mental state actually gets better. There's no time for this in healthcare. And I was part of the biodesign program in Copenhagen, biomedical design with Susan Pernille, and we shadowed healthcare providers, and independent of the specialty, the domain, it was the same thing. There's no time to get new insights. There's no time to develop. There's no time to innovate. Healthcare providers go to congresses less than they've ever done before. And there's just also too much noise. All pharma companies, including Novo Nordisk, maybe also Novartis, I'm not going to point fingers, but we all, we flood you with information. You don't have time to digest it, right? So this is like an evil spiral of downward trajectory. The operators of healthcare, in return, they need to partner up. I mean, it is sort of alpha omega for the ones operating healthcare, whether you're in primary care, secondary care, you need to partner up externally to solve for things you cannot solve yourself. And if we take the pharma point of view, I mean, this is what you typically associate with pharma. I haven't been long in the pharma industry, but in general, what you see over on the left-hand side, that's like a pharmaceutical sales rep. That still exists till to this, this day. We walk around knocking on doors, and then we try to sort of give 3 key messages to doctors and nurses, trying to push them to prescribe a product. And it's not very charming. It's sort of a major turnoff. Then we're really good at developing adherence apps, right? Adherence is sort of a clinical mental model. Not a lot of patients, it doesn't resonate with them really. I mean, life stands in the way of adherence at times. And then, you have shows like Dope Stick showing how Purdue Pharma operated their business. This is not not necessarily, when you come with like this type of baggage with you, whether you're a healthcare provider or a government institution, whatever, you're not necessarily, coming with the best of context for partnership. But I do also want to say that pharma is also full of these kinds of people. Now, just in Novo Nordisk, we have plenty of medical doctors that have practiced before. We have a lot of nurses, people who've studied pharmacy, people who understand the innate needs of healthcare, and they all have sincere ambitions to make that healthcare sector better. That's often why they joined the pharmaceutical company. They understand the needs of HCPs and patients. Now, I want to share with you the sort of innovation model that we apply in my team, and that sort of we developed from the ground up, very much inspired by the biodesign methodology. Now, I'll share with you this shortly, and then I'll share a quite interesting project we did in Denmark, where we developed a decision support tool for primary care physicians. Now, this is not rocket science, very basic. I think the most difficult part about this process is more the discipline of actually doing the things we talk about doing in design, because that's where often there's a discrepancy between the textbook and the practice, right? Now, the first one, explore the needs and validate, GOOTB, and Seuss is laughing there because this is a practice that, we learned at that program, get out of the building. And I really apply this till this day, getting out of the building. There's so many things that keep us stuck to the desks at the offices, so many meetings, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of excuses to not go out there and talk to the real people. And this is really a muscle you need to develop within your organizations to really get out there and understand the needs. And then obviously there's a robust validation process tied closely to that needs exploration for you to understand what should I work on. Then I cannot understate the importance of interdisciplinary teams. You really need the skills of, or at least the right skills across the team to develop what you're doing. And then co-design is something that we do by standards. And when I say co-design, we invite healthcare providers, we invite patients in, for instance, in a whole week design sprint. We bring them in for a whole week, and then they're part of designing the solution. And what you get out of that is not only listening to them and understanding their need, you also get ambassadorship and adoption from the get-go, because by the time you're done with the solution, you already have some users that understand it quite rigorously, and they're also ready to use it and talk about it with their peers, which, by the way, peer-to-peer sharing in healthcare is probably the strongest way of building adoption. Then I won't spend too much time on rapid prototyping, but the thing I've highlighted in red, user testing, again, something that we talk about in textbooks, but really requires testing and discipline to keep bringing your solution out there to the users and get that feedback. It's quite uncomfortable at times also, because you'll get negative feedback. And again, building that muscle within your organizations to almost enjoy that negative feedback. That's like part of the success criteria of moving forward. This really is a huge change management exercise. And then the rest is sort of as itself, build the product that makes sense, involve some key opinion leaders to really spread the word around this. The next thing I want to share with you, and it's quite interesting that the previous talk was talking about getting rid of paper. We in fact did this project, and we do a lot of innovative stuff at Novo Nordisk. We run AI projects. We're building all sorts of cool digital things. But this project was actually a paper-based decision support tool. And this goes back to, again, design is an agnostic methodology. Often when we talk about design or new, there's almost like a predisposed decision. It has to be digital. Well, not always. In fact, sometimes something analog can also get the job done. This is a risk stratification tool for managing type 2 diabetes. What we discovered exploring needs in the Danish healthcare sector is there's a task shifting happening in healthcare, and it's happening across the board, but specific to diabetes, a lot of physicians are handing over critical tasks and managing the condition to nursing staff. And nurses, any nurses in the room? 1, 2. And I'm not gonna, put people in boxes, but from my understanding, nurses really like concrete guidelines and concrete sort of tell me what I need to do in 10 steps, and then I'll do that. If there's any sort of element of, outside that box, that's quite uncomfortable for nursing staff, at least in a clinical workflow. One task that in Denmark, doctors had handed over to nurses was risk stratification. And what does that mean? That means we assess the risk of a patient, and then we put them in some sort of treatment path. And that decision was very difficult for nurses. So what we did was work with the leading KOLs within primary care and also endocrinology in Denmark, and we developed a framework on how to do this in less than 5 minutes. And that's what you see here. There's sort of some schematics around the most important data points and decisions to be made within diabetes. And then you might sit and think, well, holy shit, is that really what you had to present a paper-based product? But honestly, we went out and tested this in thousands of clinics in Denmark. This is data coming from 40 clinics specifically where we had access to their databases. And it shows two very important things. One, you're seeing a steep adoption of the tool. That means already there you have product market fit of some sort. People are actually using it in a clinical workflow, and they keep using it, and it makes sense for them. So that's quite important. Two is on the right-hand side, what you see in yellow and red are patients that are perhaps not receiving the treatment that they should. according to their status of the disease. Now, we talk a lot around driving health outcomes and prevention, et cetera. This is data showing that the tool actually enabled identification of patients at risk of developing comorbidities. And what's also very important with nurses in primary care is once they've identified a risk, they're much better than doctors at acting. So they treating aggressively happens sort of much faster with a nursing staff once they've identified a risk. Whereas a doctor can be slightly laid back at times to say, well, we'll just look at that in 6 months or 12 months, whatever. Now, what we also did after that was we had this in mind from the beginning. Building a tool like this, we're navigating in a evidence-based environment. We can't just bring tools or decision support tools without any kind of sort of evidence or data or validation. And just for your information, we started this project about 2.5 years ago, and just a few months ago, we actually did a publication in the Journal of Diabetes Epidemiology and Management stating the effect of this tool. Again, a fairly simple paper-based tool that was designed through the methodologies of design thinking and co-design. Novo Nordisk, a pharmaceutical company, working with healthcare providers in Denmark and government institutions. We have a publication out there that sort of states the effect of this has nothing to do with our products, has nothing to do with Ozempic or any of the other things. It has to do with supporting healthcare in sincere efforts and innovating healthcare for the better. And we're quite proud of this. If I were to just share 3 key takeaways, and then I'm done, is one, partnerships are necessary to remove the needle. It has to be established on sincerity. So for us, as a pharmaceutical company, it's very important to sort of sometimes let go of some of the commercial stuff, right? Here, we're interested in patients being treated better. Of course, there's a link between that and our products. We have the most innovative products out there, but we're actually just trying to solve a problem in healthcare. 2, co-design is absolutely possible, although healthcare professionals are quite busy and they don't have 10, 15 minutes to spare. But if you are actually trying to solve a problem that is very critical to them, they'll spend a whole week with you. And we have this as a proof and many other projects where they just step in and participate in a sprint for a whole week. And then finally, we're working in an evidence-based environment. Have this in mind when you do anything of this nature. Have a plan to show the effect in a validated scientific way. That'll definitely get you further along. That's it.